Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alan Price. I am the director here at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum, and on behalf of all my library and foundation colleagues, I'd like to welcome all of you who are joining us this evening, whether you're in person or virtually online. To open, I'd like to humbly begin with a land acknowledgement to recognize that the land on which we stand or sit was once stewarded by indigenous peoples, and this is an institution that preserves history, makes history accessible, and challenges all Americans to engage in the civic opportunity and struggle of helping the nation grow ever closer to the noblest ideals of its founding. And in accordance with that mission, thank you. And in accordance with that mission, I invite all of us to learn more about and learn more from our nation's history, including Indigenous history, and contemplate how to honor and steward the land that we all inhabit. This evening's program, which I'm so excited about, and I can see that you are too, is presented as part of the Kennedy Library Forum series, and I'd like to acknowledge the generous support of our underwriters of the Kennedy Library Forums, lead sponsors Bank of America and the Lowell Institute, as well as the Mass Cultural Council. And we're so glad tonight's program also complements our current Presidential Pets special exhibit. Quick show of hands, how many of you got to see that before you sat down? Terrific. Those are good numbers. Thank you, and if you'd like to come back and see it again, or if you didn't quite get to see it, please know that that exhibit will be up through April 26th, and then we'll have to take it down to get ready for the next exhibit. So bring your friends, bring your family through April 26th. A small but important request for the good people who are attending here in person. If you would, please take this moment to double check that your electronic devices are silenced. Thank you. We have a special welcome for one of our guests here in the audience today. Evan Wang is not only a freshman at Harvard, but he is the National Youth Poet Laureate, and his book, Slow Burn, will be coming out in 2 weeks. So if you want to stand for a moment, Evan. We look forward to a robust question and answer period this evening. And I say robust in the sense of the spirit of the question and the answer, but the actual time for it will be actually quite brief. So get right to the question. If you're joining us online, you'll see full instructions on screen for submitting your questions via email or comments on our YouTube page during the program. When the Q&A begins, we will invite those of you who are joining us in person to proceed to the microphones in the aisles to ask your questions. Billy Collins has kindly agreed to sign copies of his book, Dog Show, following tonight's program. Our bookstore has copies available for sale if you are interested, and we are thrilled to have the opportunity to spend this evening with our distinguished guests. Let me briefly mention the format. Billy Collins is going to do some readings. There will be a moderated conversation. He will do some more readings. And then, with a little bit of time at the end, we will have some Q&A. So I am honored to introduce Billy Collins. Here are some highlights of his extraordinary achievements. He is the author of 15 collections of poetry, including Sailing Alone Around the Room, Aimless Love, and most recently, Dog Show. He served 2 terms as Poet Laureate of the United States and is a former distinguished professor of English at Lehman College and New York State poet. He is a New York Public Library Literary Lion and a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And I'm also delighted to welcome back Jared Bowen, our moderator for this evening. He is the Emmy Award-winning executive arts editor and host of The Culture Show. Many of you have heard it, a daily radio program and podcast at GBH exploring the creative process Through a lively mix of local and national artist profiles, performances, and exhibitions, he is also a special correspondent to the PBS NewsHour and covers the latest happenings on the region's theater, art, music, dance, and film scenes on GBH's Morning Edition and Boston Public Radio. Please join me in welcoming our special guests.
Thank you so much for that introduction. One little correction, I'm not a member of the Academy of Arts and Sciences, 3,000 members. I am a member of the Academy of Arts and Letters, 300. There's a little difference there. The other problem is that you have a great voice, just amazing. I feel like I'm not going to be on, not a career in radio, but anyway, yes, I've been here before. It's wonderful to be here. The scene is great. Kennedy was my president. You know, I was in college when he became president, and he went to a Catholic college. He was the first Catholic president, and needless to say, I just have a great sense of honor of being associated with this institution. So yes, my new book is called Dog Show, and Garrett and Garrett's gonna ask me some questions about it. But basically, I want to read some poems from it and give you a sense of it. So I'm going to jump right in. The first poem is called Dharma, and it's not a dog's name, but you're supposed to name a dog 2 syllables. Well, Dharma is 2 syllables, I guess. But so in calling the dog, you say, Lucky, and there's that little da-da, and that's called a minor third in music. And it's the same you have in European ambulances, da-da-da, that's the minor third. And there are lots of other examples of it. And the bridge to Somewhere Over the Rainbow, da-da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, minor third is very important if you're naming a dog. The dog was named Janine, and she was my dog. So, but I'm trying to get it to see if the dog has some spiritual aspect to her. The way the dog trots out the front door every morning, without a hat or an umbrella, without any money or the keys to her doghouse, never fails to fill the saucer of my heart with milky admiration. Who provides a finer example of a life without encumbrance? Thoreau in his curtainless hut with a single plate, a single spoon, Gandhi with his staff and his wire spectacles. Off she goes into the material world with nothing but her brown coat and her modest blue collar, following only her wet nose, the twin portals of her steady breathing, followed only by the plume of her tail. If only she did not shove the cat aside every morning and eat all his food, what a model of self-containment she would be. What a paragon of earthly detachment. If only she were not so eager for a rub behind the ears, so acrobatic in her welcomes. If only I were not her God. Thank you. And here's a poem called Walking My 75-Year-Old Dog. She's painfully slow, so I often have to stop and wait while she sniffs some roadside weeds, as if she were reading the biography of a famous dog. And she's not a pretty sight anymore, dragging one of her hind legs, her coat too matted to brush or comb, and a snout white as a marshmallow. We usually walk down a disused road that runs along the edge of a lake, whose surface trembles in a high wind and is slow to ice over as the months grow cold. We don't walk very far before she sits down on her worn haunches and looks up at me with her rheumy eyes. Then it's time to carry her back to the car. Just thinking about the honesty in her eyes, I realize I should tell you, she's not really 75. She's 14. I guess I was trying to appeal to your sense of the bizarre, the curiosities of the sideshow. I mean, who really cares about another person's dog? Everything else I've said is true, except the part about her being 14. I mean, she's old, but not that old, and it's not nice to divulge the true age of a lady. You don't mind if I mess with you a little bit, do you? And this is a poem called Weighing the Dog. It is awkward for me and bewildering for him as I cradle him in my arms, balancing our weight on the bathroom scale. But this is the way to weigh a dog, and easier than training him to sit still in one spot with his tongue out, waiting for a cookie. With pencil and paper, I subtract my weight from our total to find out the remainder that is his. And I start wondering if there is an analogy here. It could not have to do with my leaving you, though I never figured out what you amounted to until I subtracted myself from our combination. You held me in your arms more than I held you through those awkward and bewildering months, and now we are both lost in strange and distant neighborhoods. And here's one called Another Reason Why I Don't Keep a Gun in the House. The neighbor's dog will not stop barking. He is barking the same high rhythmic bark that he barks every time they leave the house. They must switch him on their way out. The neighbor's dog will not stop barking. I close all the windows in the house and put on a Beethoven symphony, full blast, but I can still hear him, muffled under the music, barking, barking, barking. And now I can see him sitting in the orchestra, his head raised confidently, as if Beethoven had included a part for barking dog. When the record finally ends, he is still barking, sitting there in the oboe section, barking, his eyes fixed on the conductor, who is entreating him with his baton, while the other musicians listen in respectful silence to the famous barking dog solo, that endless coda that first established Beethoven as an innovative genius. And they're in the exhibit, Presidential Pets, that features more dogs than possums, for example. But there is a possum up there. And this is a wonderful, I thought it was some kind of divine coincidence that I have this book out, but it was actually Liz, who's one of the directors here, who thought this would go together nicely, and so thank you for that. So in one of them, a dog is talking about how he gets more attention than the president and stuff like that. So there are two poems I'm going to read together that in which the dog is, we're overhearing the thoughts of a dog. And this one's called A Dog on His Master. As young as I look, I am growing older faster than he. 7-to-1 is the ratio they tend to say. Whatever the number, I will pass him one day and take the lead. the way I do on our walks in the woods. And if this ever manages to cross his mind, it would be the sweetest shadow I have ever cast on snow or grass. There's a lot of books out on dog cognition and dog emotions, canine. A lot of curiosity. I mean, as you would naturally develop this curiosity if you had a dog looking at you all day, wondering what it's thinking and all that. But I sort of reversed the thing here. One thing we think about is the fact that the dog. There's one problem with dogs: they live too fast. Right, they die on us, and but here the dog is wondering. The dog is aware of its own mortality, and is wondering if the master thinks that. Does the master know this is going to end? So the tables are turned. This is not so sweet a dog as that one, and this is called the Revenant. I am the dog you put to sleep, as you like to call the needle of oblivion. Come back to tell you this simple thing: I never liked you. When I licked your face, I thought of biting off your nose. When I watched you toweling yourself dry, I wanted to leap and unman you with a snap. I resented the way you moved, your lack of animal grace, the way you would sit in a chair to eat, a napkin on your lap, a knife in your hand. I would have run away, but I was too weak, a trick you taught me while I was learning to sit and heel, and greatest of insults, shake hands without a hand. I admit the sight of the leash would excite me, but only because it meant I was about to smell things you had never touched. You do not want to believe this, but I have no reason to lie. I hated the car, hated the rubber toys, disliked your friends, and worse, your relatives. The jingling of my tags drove me mad. You always scratched me in the wrong place. All I wanted from you is food and water in my metal bowls. While you slept, I watched you breathe as the moon rose in the sky. It took all of my strength not to raise my head and howl. Now I am free of the collar, free of the yellow raincoat, monogrammed sweater, the absurdity of your lawn. And that is all you need to know about this place, except what you already supposed and are glad it did not happen sooner. Everyone here can read and write, the dogs in poetry, the cats and all the others in prose. Thank you. Your dog likes you, don't worry. Just saying, you have to be true to the poem, not to reality. So read a very short poem and then one more, and we'll talk. And the short one is this, it's called As Time Goes By. Like the, like the dog who forgot where he buried his bone, the old farmer forgot where he buried the dog. And then this one is called The Following Dogs, which is sort of a pun. The following dogs. There are dogs who will follow you perpetually and as gladly as if it were their purpose in life, at least while in the act of following you. Other dogs enjoy being followed. They sniff around, look back, and run ahead. W.B. Yeats, so monumentally heartsick, spent his boyhood summers following a black dog and a white dog around the hilly Irish countryside, as if that were the purpose of his life, which it might have been at the time. Clearly, there are worse practices than spending your time following a dog, whichever way she may roam into the woods or across a stream. How would it be possible to slap a child or smuggle arms to a band of wrathful gorillas if you're busy keeping up with a dog? So instead of following your bliss, follow around some light-hearted dog. Surely it's better than doing nothing, as if anything were better than doing nothing, which, setting dogs aside for now, is said to be the best thing one can do or not do, but in a positive way, forever, amen. Thank you.
So I'm assuming you didn't go on a dog bender, that maybe this is over a period of time?
Oh, no, the poems were written at various times. But I was, initially the book was a very specialized, special edition book done in England. There were fewer poems and beautiful same illustrations. But there were only 120 copies of it. I mean, it cost a fortune, the books, they're, special. And so Pamela, the artist, and I got a few copies, and that was it. And then I went on a bender because we talked Random House into doing actually a $19, sub 20 is good, price point, they say. And that became this book. And between that, I did sit down and intentionally put my nose to the grindstone and wrote some dog poems. But the others are stretched out over a lot of time.
What has brought you back to dogs over the course of your life?
Well, I think if you, after a while, if you write enough poems, and our young poet will find this out, that certain obsessions are revealed. And so there are, and I thought for this special book in England, there should be a theme rather than just a gathering of odd poems. So I knew there were a lot of mice in my poems, and I thought, I really don't want to write a book about mice. And there are a lot of clouds and that kind of thing. And so dogs seem to be a good subject, I don't know. They're better than cats. I mean, I don't know. There are a lot of cats in the presidential pet show.
There are.
But this sums up the dog-cat thing for me. There was a cartoon, not in the New Yorker, and I don't know the cartoonist, but there's a dog and a cat, very simply drawn, and they're standing up facing each other, I think, to make their speech a little more credible. And the cat is saying, "Did you know that in ancient Egypt, we were held as spiritual creatures with religious significance?" And the dog says, "Did you know I was a good boy?" So, who do you like more?
But if I remember closely enough from the book, you have had cats. You do have cats?
Yes, I have cats, damn it. My wife brought a cat I was on the road and she said, I called her and she said, I've got a cat. I thought, okay, I'd live with cats. But I am such an only child. I'm a professional only child. When I called her about a year later, she said, I've got another cat. And I said, no, you're going to ruin the first cat's life because the cat is an only cat, And she got the other cat, and they don't communicate at all. The first cat just goes, and that's about it.
The theme of age surfaces a lot in this book.
No kidding.
And
You got that right. You're a perceptive reader. Yeah.
look at the time.
Yeah.
So is it all, well now maybe we'll plumb that a little bit. Is it all about the dog?
No, it's just all about mortality. I mean, mortality is the oldest theme in poetry. It probably is carpe diem in Western poetry, at least, and that means seize the day because you don't have an infinite number of them, and grab life and live more vigorously and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's nothing morbid. I mean, it's more that death italicizes life. It makes it maybe more vivid. Wallace Stevens said, "Death is the mother of beauty." And that puzzled me when I read it, I think, in graduate school. And then it became clear when some pointed out that, well, if you go to a restaurant and there's flowers on the table and you feel them and they're artificial, it's kind of a bring down. And the reason they're not interesting is they're not going to die, right? The real roses are in a state of dying, as are you. And that's why we like real roses. They're being, and their death is wrapped in, mortality is wrapped into being. Yeah.
How is it to write about mortality and consider mortality as you age?
Well, it just gets worse. I mean, it becomes, instead of something you write on the blackboard, it becomes something that kind of you wake up with. But it's more vivid, I suppose. But I'm writing I'm really not much of an autobiographical poet. I'm writing in the school of all the other poets I've read, and that theme, as I said, is a river. The shadow of mortality, let's change it from a river to a shadow, falls across the page of so many poets, especially the English Romantic poets. But John Donne, I mean, it's all about Shakespeare's sonnets. It's all about it's slipping away. Let's go. Let's do something. So it's not really that it's becoming more crucial a topic. It's just becoming. I'm just trying to be true to the poem, not to my own autobiographical situation.
To bring it back to dogs for a moment, for all of us who've had dogs, it is that it's so wonderful to have them, but we do recognize how life moves through them, and how is it to consider mortality on a smaller scale in their shorter lives?
Yeah, well, the dogs teach you how to die in a way. Their vanishing is part of the experience of having a dog, or probably even a parakeet or something. I don't know. It's as I said, there are books about what's going on in the mind of dogs, and I think mortality is not one of those things. I don't think animals know they're going to die, and that death comes as a kind of odd experience. This feels different. I've never felt this before, and I think that's what happens when the dog vanishes. I'm guessing what's going on inside of dogs. I have a good guess about that. I think 90% of the dog's mind is filled with you. That's what the dog is all about. The dog and the other 10% is like a tennis ball or something. But the dog wants to, the man's best friend or our best friend. I think that cliche becomes true when you think of what is a friend. And the best definition of friendship I know is that friendship is a relationship without purpose. There's no purpose to the friendship. I don't want anything from you, and you don't want anything from me. It's not transactional. We only want one thing. Think about your really close friends. We just want to spend time with each other, right? We want to be with our friends, do stuff with them, and that's all the dog wants to be. The dog wants to be with you, right? I mean, if you wake up at 3:30 in the morning, the dog wakes up. The cat's not going to wake up. But the dog wakes up and, "Well, what are we doing? Oh, you're getting in the car? We're going to the car? Great. Dog hops in the car, right? He wants to be with you. And that's what drives a dog. And that's what's so wonderful about it, and how keen that makes the loss. Yeah.
Before I leave dogs for a moment, The Revenant. What happened? Were you having a bad day?
No, no, I just thought it was a good idea. I don't know. I mean, I try to be a little subversive in some of these poems, like messing with you and the 75-year-old dog, and then she's 14. Well, she's not really 14. I mean, what is going on there? Well, I'm kind of getting you off balance, and I'm ending by making myself look like a gentleman who's following a certain etiquette about not revealing the age. Are you 84 now, or what's going on with you? Revealing someone else's age. So no, it was just a trope. If I have an idea like that, a dog comes back and says, "I never liked you." It's game on. I just think, well, this can go somewhere. And then I'm playing this game of how this thing is going to go. And it's a game any of us can play. And that's what I think is a feature of some of my poems, is that you could play too, but you haven't thought of it. I did. So, you see the only child emerging here. By the way, at the signing table, there's a special express line for if you're an only child.
So does it always begin with an idea, and does it always play out as you just said, that you don't necessarily have an idea of where it's going?
Yeah, it's not even, I've never had an idea. I think of an idea as being like relativity is an idea. I get a notion, a little, I have a poem called Chopping Some Parsley While Listening to Art Blakey's version of Three Blind Mice. And that's true. And I just thought, how did the mice become blind? Okay. Screw dinner, I need to write this out. And that's another, how does it unravel? Well, if it all happened, if we were blind altogether by some explosion or something, that's one thing. But what if they were blinded individually? How did they manage to find one another? And that's the way it goes, And then I'll tell you, writing poems like this is very self-entertaining. So yeah, it's a little notion that shows some willingness to be developed. Yeah.
How regularly do those ideas spring to you?
Well, enough. For 15 books. So, but not every day. It's not like a maddening thing. You have to wait and be patient, I guess. I don't think I have a muse or anything, but it's like an angle of looking at things. Another poem is about, let's say you're listening to a bird song, and that maybe there's 6 or 7 different types of birds, and you're listening to them. Well, do they all birds understand each other? Or do blue jays just understand blue jay talk? Or is there a bird which is a translator bird? So you see how, those are the alleys or rabbit holes I like to go down and then figure out an ending. Really, the work of poetry for me is to figure out the ending. And as you said, I don't know where I'm going. I see the possibility of that. I have a poem called Questions About Angels. Now, we could all play this game if we had more time and you had pencil and paper and you wanted to. I could say, let's say an angel appeared and you can 3 questions. What would you ask the angel? That's fun to do, maybe in 5th grade or something. I don't know, but I have a poem. I start interrogating angels. Do What do they do? Do they circle the throne chanting in Latin or all sorts of stuff? And then the only question we hear about angels is how many can dance on the head of a pin, right? And I get to that later, and I say, it's supposed to drive us into like millions and billions and collapse into infinity, but maybe the answer is one female angel dancing alone in her stocking feet, a small jazz combo working in the background. She sways like a branch in the wind, closing her beautiful eyes, and the tall, thin bassist looks over at his watch because she has been dancing forever, and now it is very late, even for musicians.
I'm struck by the way you talk about this reminds me of all the songwriters and singers I've interviewed over the years where they constantly have this song or the melody running through their head. Is that something that you constantly have flowing?
No. No, I think I'd be in a madhouse. No, I haven't. I have just enough. Yeah, I don't have any work habits for those young people. Sort of an inspirational role model here. Don't bother applying yourself. Max Beerbohm said that the hardest thing about being a poet was figuring out what to do with the remaining 23 and a half hours of the day. So, a poem can be written in 15 minutes or a few hours. And then you're just not a poet for a while. In fact, a lot of the poems I begin the poem as a writer, not really a poet, a writer, and I turn into a poet as the poem goes along.
I also wonder if your poems are, if you consider them finished, if you're returning to the angels, for example, in your own mind.
No. No, I think they're fine.
Okay.
No, I don't let them out of the house until they're cooked. No, I wouldn't change a word. Yeah, it's not negotiable. It's not, no comparison involved here, but Nabokov once wrote his publisher in New York, and he said, by editor, I assume you mean proofreader. I like, copy editors are really fun to work with, but no one else, I never get a line edit. No editor has ever told me what to change a line.
How would that go if that happened?
I just wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
Or I might, he could be, or she could be right, but it's not, or it doesn't happen very often.
I want to just go back, I'm getting the rap already. The poets you were mentioning at the onset of this conversation, how much through your years of teaching and reading do all of them sit with you and inform what you're doing?
Oh, completely. Writing, especially poetry, I think, is a very solitary activity, but you always have the poets of the past who are lighting your page, especially the strong influences like Wordsworth particularly, and Coleridge, English Romantics, and they're always there, and I'm playing off them. I have a number of poems that refer to them, maybe without you knowing it. I've teaching college English and poetry for decades. I have a kind of iambic pentameter. I'm not writing an iambic pentameter, but I have the pentameter beat that I've internalized because I've read Milton and the Prelude, Wordsworth Prelude, very important. So, the influences are always there. I had a house in Westchester County and chopping wood in the back all the time to feed the stove, and I thought there's got to be a poem, and this is a metaphor for something. But then I thought, no, Frost has this. It was like police tape around the woods. You know, you can't go in there. That's Robert Frost. So finally, out of frustration, I just thought, well, I'm going to write this anyway. So the poem begins. It's called Chopping Wood. Frost, capital F, because it starts the sentence. Frost covered this decades ago, and frost will cover it again tonight, the leafy disarray of these woods. So it's the winter frost. Yeah. So you don't have to know that. You get really a lot of extra points if you did. But I'm recognizing Frost privately by making him the first word of the poem. And then I dismiss him, yeah.
Well, just as I'm being dismissed right now, Billy Collins, it's been fun for me to be with you. By the way, did you all notice we dressed alike today?
Right. You got the phone call. He called me.
It's been great to be with you. Great. He's going to read again and take your questions. Thank you for having me. Thank you for talking with me.
Thank you. Thank you. And there will be some more questions. So I thought I'd read some non-dog poems. And this one is about, again, the way these poems begin, how they pop up, and what makes them, what interests me is this basic idea. I don't know maybe someone else has written about it, but the question is who goes first? Okay, in a marriage and whatever. A friend of mine said he was kept awake by wondering which Everly brother would go first. So this is called Me First. We often fly in the sky together, and we're always okay. There's our luggage now waiting for us on the carousel. And we drive lots of places in all manner of hectic traffic, yet here we are, pulling in the driveway again. So many opportunities to die together, but no meteor has struck our house, no tornado has lifted us into its funnel. The odds say then that one of us will go before the other, like heading off into a heavy snowstorm, leaving the other one behind to stand in the kitchen or lie on the bed under the fan. So why not let me, the older one, go first? I don't want to see you everywhere as I wait for the snow to stop before setting out with a crooked stick, calling your name. Let's see. Thank you. Well, here's a poem. You remember back in the before the 20th century, or the 21st century. I keep getting them confused, but we had this habit of kind of taming the past by dividing it into decades and talking about, well, it's kind of a 60s thing, or a 50s thing. I don't think any other people did that before in history. And we were always supposed to feel kind of nostalgic that the 50s are gone, and then all the fashions with it. So this is a poem called Nostalgia. Remember the 1340s? We were doing a dance called the catapult. You always wore brown, the color craze of the decade. And I was draped in one of those capes that were popular, the ones with unicorns and pomegranates and needlework. Everyone would pause for beer and onions in the afternoon. And at night, we would play a game called Find the Cow. Everything was hand-lettered back then, not like today. Where has the summer of 1572 gone? Brocade and sonnet marathons were the rage. We used to dress up in the flags of rival baronies and conquer one another in cold rooms of stone. Out on the dance floor, we were all doing the struggle, while your sister practiced the Daphne all alone in her room. We borrowed the jargon of farriers for our slang. These days, language seems transparent, a badly broken code. The 1790s will never come again. Childhood was big. People would take walks to the very tops of hills and write down what they saw in their journals without speaking. Our collars were high and our hats were extremely soft. We would surprise each other with alphabets made of twigs. It was a wonderful time to be alive, or even dead. I am very fond of the period between 1815 and 1821. Europe trembled while we sat still for our portraits. And I would love to return to 1901, if only for a moment, time enough to wind up a music box and do a few dance steps. Or shoot me back to 1922 or 1941, or at least let me recapture the serenity of last month when we picked berries and glided through afternoons in a canoe. Even this morning would be an improvement over the present. I was in the garden then, surrounded by the hum of bees and the Latin names of flowers, watching the early light flash off the slanted windows of the greenhouse and silver the limbs on the rows of dark hemlocks. As usual, I was thinking about the moments of the past, letting my memory rush over them like water rushing over the stones on the bottom of a stream. I was even thinking a little about the future, that place where people are doing a dance we cannot imagine, a dance whose name we can only guess. That's that. Thank you. So that's another poem of just illustrating earlier, just coming on an idea of applying, this sort of thing about decades to starting with the Middle Ages, and then the poem has this very chronological movement through the ages. And where is that going to go? Well, you're going to arrive at the present, right? And then you become nostalgic for the immediate past. Life was better at lunch than it is now. It's 4:30. This is a poem called Forgetfulness, which is simply about that. And it starts with someone called literary amnesia, forgetting stuff you've read. Forgetfulness. The name of the author is the first to go, followed obediently by the title, the plot, the heartbreaking conclusion, the entire novel, which suddenly becomes one you have never read, never even heard of. It is as if one by one, the memories you used to harbor decided to retire to the southern hemisphere of the brain, to a little fishing village where there are no phones. Long ago, you kissed the names of the 9 muses goodbye, and you watched the quadratic equation pack its bag. And even now, as you memorize the order of the planets, something else is slipping away. A state flower, perhaps, the address of an uncle, the capital of Paraguay. Whatever it is you are struggling to remember, it is not poised on the tip of your tongue, not even lurking in some obscure corner of your spleen. It has floated away down a dark mythological river whose name begins with an L, as far as you can recall, well on your own way to oblivion, where you will join those who have even forgotten how to swim and how to ride a bicycle. No wonder you rise in the middle of the night to look up the date of a famous battle in a book on war. No wonder the moon in the window seems to have drifted out of a love poem that you used to know by heart. Thank you. thank you so much. I'm just going to read maybe one more. I will read a very, let's see. Well, here's a very short poem called Divorce. Once 2 spoons in bed, now tined forks across a granite table, and the knives they have hired. Yeah, no, that's really. It's not very going. Yeah, oh boy, that was rough. Oh, I have another one. No more. What is it? No more ball. No more heavy ball. Just the sound of the drag chain with every other step. See, I can go dark. Not all funny. Okay, one more, and then we're done. We'll have some questions. Where is it? This is embarrassing. Okay, I won't. Sorry, this is an unprofitable waste of time here. Oh, here it is. Okay, you've talked to it. It's hard to talk to teenagers, right? Yeah, I'll get that later. So here's an attempt to. Someone said, never try to cheer up an adolescent. You just make matters worse. So here's an attempt to talk to and it's called To My Favorite 17-Year-Old High School Girl. Do you realize that if you had started building the Parthenon on the day you were born, you would be all done in only 1 more year? Of course, you couldn't have done that all alone. So never mind, you're fine just as you are. You are loved for simply being yourself. But did you know that at your age, Judy Garland was pulling down $150,000 a picture? Joan of Arc was leading the French army to victory, and Blaise Pascal had cleaned up his room? No, wait, I mean, he had invented the calculator. Of course, there'll be time for all that later in your life, after you come out of your room and begin to blossom, or at least pick up all your socks. For some reason, I keep remembering that Lady Jane Grey was Queen of England when she was only 15, but then she was beheaded, so never mind her as a role model. A few centuries later, when he was your age, Franz Schubert was doing the dishes for his family, but that did not keep him from composing 2 symphonies, 4 operas, and 2 complete masses as a youngster. But of course, that was in Austria at the height of Romantic lyricism, not here in the suburbs of Cleveland. Frankly, who cares if Annie Oakley was a crack shot at 15 or Maria Callas debuted as Tosca at 17? We think you are special by just being you, playing with your food and staring into space. By the way, I lied about Schubert doing the dishes, but that doesn't mean he never helped out around the house. So there are 2 microphones here, one right there and one some other place. So if you have any questions, you just have to jump up there and ask me. Or if you have a very powerful voice, ask me. Please don't recite any of your poems. It's not done. No time for that. Yeah, there you are. Whoa.
Hi
Yeah.
there. So
Hi.
I'm the representative for our online attendees,
Yeah.
and I have 2 questions for you if I could. Is it hard to read aloud what you have written from your heart? And how do you feel the digital era has impacted poetry, publishing, and marketing? And what advice would you give to a new writer?
Is it hard to read out loud what you wrote from your heart? No. I mean, I hope I made that abundantly clear tonight. I mean, there are some poets who don't read very well. I know I've been to a lot of poetry readings, and if you went to a piano recital and played the piano as badly as these people read, you would want your money back. I mean, people would just leave. So people who read poetry in public should be auditioned, I think. By me, no. I don't have time for that. No, I mean, there are, yeah. Well, it's written from the heart, but it's not really autobiographical. It's an autobiography of what I'm thinking, but it's not an autobiography of what I'm feeling or experiencing in that way. I'm not expressing myself. I'm not even sure I have a self. I don't know. If you think about it, what is that? You might have many selves. Then which one is the real one? Well, this goes down a rabbit hole of self-examination. But I'm not expressing myself. I'm making something for the reader. That's what I'm doing. I'm making something. I'm not burdening you with my thoughts and feelings about what happened or when I went to the doctor and he told me this bad news or something. I don't think you care about that, and I don't want to tell you anyway. I'm trying to make something well. I write line by line, stanza by stanza. I don't sound like a formalist poet. I don't have an end rhyme, nor do I write to the metronome of ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. But almost all of my revisions are about sound, making the poem sound better, or making it go better. Rhythmic changes, and I'm trying to make something for you, and I'm completely willing to discard any, sincerity or fidelity I have to you. I'm just trying to be faithful to the poem, and try to make a good poem. People come to poetry not because they're interested in the poet; they become because they're interested in poetry. So I try to lie in every one of my poems. And the lie is that I love poetry more than I love myself, which is not true, right? But I want to give you the impression. Because if you come to the page with a love for poetry, and why else would you be reading poetry, then we overlap. It's clear that I care about poetry too. I've made this poem good. So then we click. Over here.
What's your favorite kind of dog?
Everyone heard that but me. What is it?
What's your favorite kind of dog?
Oh, favorite kind of dog. I like a Basque shepherd. You can look it up. They're very strange dogs. They're very rare. And you get them in the Basque area between France and Spain. And you have to go there to get one. They don't breed them over here. So if you go on you have a computer? Of course you do. I was kidding. Do you have a typewriter? You know what you don't have, I'll bet, is a dictionary. Why would you have a dictionary? It's all in your computer. A friend of mine brought a dictionary into class 2 or 3 years ago. 40% of the students had never seen a dictionary. And one of them said she had a headache being caused by the dictionary. So there's so many words in there. But Auden said a good sign of a poet is you go to look up a word, and 15 minutes later you're still in the dictionary, wandering around from word to word. That's the stuff you love. A bricklayer loves bricks. A guy who carves animals out of soap loves soap. We love words. Thank you for your question.
Hi. I think earlier you said that you begin a poem as a writer, and it sounded like you were making a distinction between a writer and a poet. I wondered if you could talk a little about that.
Well, I use very straight language in the beginning of the poem, and I don't make any demands on the reader. I don't start out like we're in the back of an ambulance heading toward a mental hospital. I'm not burdening you with personal experience. I'm just trying to get your attention. And to get your attention, I'm just speaking very plainly. I don't use metaphors or anything in the beginning of the poem. I want to get you in, get the title, it gets you in. I can talk about titling, but the title and the first stanza just get you into the poem. So like a bright, shiny little thing, get in here. And then things become more complicated. It can be, the poem can move to a metaphoric level. The poem can just change horses in midstream. You can just, kick the poem off its horse and change directions. And then the ending of the poem usually you end up in a very different imaginative place. So a favorite metaphor of mine is you begin in Kansas and you end in Oz. And too many poems I read begin in Oz. Like, I don't know how you got there, buddy, but no, you didn't take me with you. You're just there. So very little demands on the reader. Demands come later. And you have that gradualism. Things become more complicated. Thanks. And hi, buddy, how are you?
Do you like dogs to lick your face?
Do I what?
Like dogs to lick your face.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Like dogs to lick your face.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I like to get down on the ground with the dog and just roll around with the dog and get my face licked, yeah. No better. You like that too? Yeah, you got to get down on their level and like roll with them. You can't just stand there and give them orders and lie down and do all that stuff. Yeah, so I like to get right down. Same with my grandchildren. I just got down on the floor with them and roll around. Yes, ma'am.
This isn't really a question. I just want to thank you in person for all those poetry broadcasts that you and Susanna did during the pandemic. That was the lifesaver.
Great, thank you.
And I do have a little bit of a question. Are you ever going to do a book on mice? I love the mouse in the country house.
Okay. I'm going to work on my mouse poems, right. Okay. Great. I'm glad you were part of the broadcast. We did that for 52 months. It started as my wife said, hey, it's lockdown. You're going to go crazy. You need to do something. And she was right.
Susanna, too.
Okay. I think we're done. Sir, maybe you could, I'm going to end on a groovy answer, but let's see what you're...
All right, here's a quick question.
Yeah.
So you get creative ideas all the time. Do they all turn into poems, and do they ever turn into anything else?
No, they're always poems. Yeah, it's one instrument I've learned how to play, and I wouldn't know how to do anything else. Yeah. I mean, and not to make fun of your question at all, but it was, if you go to a piano concert, you'd never say, have you tried the trombone? Or, because I think just because you can write with words doesn't mean you can change genre. So maybe a last question here.
I had a professor who talked about the center of a poem, and I was wondering if you write a poem that has a center in it every time.
I think that's for the reader to find the center of the poem. Yeah, the emotional center. Usually the center of the poem is the emotion that the reader feels. There's no other center than that. There's no geographical center in the middle of the poem. But poetry has a non-continuation bias. If you were a scientist, it means that it doesn't go on for very long. Most poems just take up one page. They can't continue. They have to end. And also every line does not go out to the end of the page. Every line has to end early. And the poem and all this results in a compaction of, what the poem is about. Whereas the novel, just 500 pages later, who had sex with whom? I don't know. Anyway, you've been a great audience, and an honor to be here at the Kennedy Library.